Welcome to Miss Retro Reads. We're continuing the book The Head Girl of the Chalet School by Eleanor M. Brent Dreyer. Chapter 5. The Prefect's Meeting. In the prefect's room, Griselle sat alone. It was the first Saturday of the term, and she was to hold her first prefect's meeting. She had been looking forward to it, but now that it was here, she felt sudden doubt as to whether she would be able to manage as well as her predecessors had done. Sitting there by herself, she went over them in her own mind. Tall, graceful Gisela, with her wide common sense and her quiet tact, which had helped to bring her through that first test year. Big, steady Juliet, who had been the head's right hand, and the beloved of all the juniors, pretty Bet, who had only one term of office, but had proved in that term that she too possessed that something which goes to make leaders. Yes, they were a fine trio to follow, and she must work hard if she meant to rise to their level. For once in her life, Griselle saw herself with open eyes, saw how her actions really looked. She did not like it. Something foreign to it came into her face as she sat there, looking unseeingly out of the window that gave on to the long, narrow valley which runs into the mountains from the shores of the Tyrrhene. She vowed to see herself that she would make good in this term of trial. She would not let Mrs. Russell, Mrs. Maynard, or Mademoiselle down, come what might. In her grim determination, she clenched her hands and squared her jaw, robbing her face of half its beauty, but giving it an added character. Well might Rosalie, the second prefect, who entered the room just then, exclaim, "Griselle, what in the world has happened?" Griselle's face resumed its normal appearance as she said hastily, "Nothing. What should have happened?" "I don't know, I'm sure," said Rosalie, pulling up a chair to the table and sitting down. "You looked as if, oh, I don't know, as if you were declaring war on someone." "What nonsense!" Griselle laughed. Rosalie shot a quick glance at her, and then she decided to change the subject. "Where do you think the others are? They're late." "Here they are," said Griselle, whose quick ear had heard the sound of light footsteps. "Come along, you people. I was beginning to think you'd forgotten all about it." "I'm sorry," said Gertrude. "I was talking with Mademoiselle about the library, and had not noticed how late it was." "And we were getting the middles and the juniors started with their hobbies," added Mary, a sturdy English girl with a pleasant face and downright manner. "Jo, Paula, and Marie are looking after the little ones, and the middles are with Ava and Dorota." "Jo says, Griselle, do you want to discuss the magazine? If so, she'll come, but if you don't, she'll stay where she is." Griselle thought. "No, I don't think we should need her this afternoon," she said slowly. "We must have a meeting of the committee soon, though. Do you mind running down and telling her, Mary? Ask her to find out from the others if they can have a meeting after tea, will you?" "Righto." Mary went off on her errand, and the rest of the prefects and sub-prefects settled down. They made an attractive group as they sat there. There were 8 of them. Griselle was in the first place at the head of the table. Next to her was Rosalie, fair, quiet, and very English-looking. On her other hand was Gertrude, who had taken her place as game captain, and below her Luigia, an Italian girl, who was the eldest of them all, since she would be 18 in 3 weeks' time. Below these grandees sat the sub-prefects. Vanna, another Italian girl, and a great favorite with everybody. Lisa, the only day girl to be prefect. Mary, when she should come, and Dira, a wild Irish girl from County Cork, whose glowing, dark prettiness told of her Spanish grandmother. Dira was something of a firebrand in the school, for she was hot-tempered, haughty, and very nearly as strong-headed as Griselle herself. The two always sparred when together. They were too much alike in character to get on well. Mary came back presently and took her seat, and Griselle stood up to open proceedings. "This is the new term," she said slowly. "We have unfortunately lost Bet, who made such a splendid head girl last term, and I've got to do my best to carry on the tradition as she left it." I hope you'll all help me." She paused and looked round at them. But even Dira was smiling and nodding approval. She went on. "We had better have the report of last term now, I think, and then we can decide what we are to do this term, Rosalie. Will you please read it?" She sat down, and Rosalie stood up and read out the following report. "Last term was a good term. The snow did not come till halfway through November, so we were able to have hockey, netball, nearly the whole of the term. Interforum matches were played, and the sixth form came first, with a fourth second and fifth third in hockey. In the netball, and lower fourth were first, the second second, and the third third. During October, a party of English schoolgirls were staying at the Stephanies, and they made up a team and challenged us. The game was won by the Chalet school by 3-1. That was in hockey," she added, turning to the others for a minute. "They also challenged us to netball and won by 17-12. In the Hobbies Club, good work was done in the handicrafts, and an exhibition was held on the last Saturday of term. The cup offered by the staff to the form that did the best and most original work went to the fifth form, who gained it through Frida Minch's Dolls of All Nations and Josephine Bettany's Marionette Theater, which she had made herself. In the guides, 2 girls, Grizel Cochrane and Mary Burnett, won the all-round chord, and Gertrude, Dira, Josephine, Paula, and Marie passed the first-class test. Other guides did well in the test exams held on the end of term, 92% passing in those for which they had entered. In folk dancing, we all worked hard, and we learned several new dances, and also began sword dancing. We did Famborough and hope to do Kirkby this term. The 8th number of our magazine, The Shaletian, appeared and was better than ever. It has been decided to have a copy of each number bound and placed in the school library so that the girls may always see how we have progressed since we began it. It was also decided to hold an Old Girls' Day once a year, and this was fixed to come in the summer term, and if possible on the Madam's birthday, the 4th of July. Our annual nativity play was given in the new hall, which Herr Braun had built for us during the last summer holidays, and was a great success. That's all," went on Rosalie, closing the exercise book. "It was a fairly full term, though nothing like some we've had. No floods," added Grizel, "nor any fires or raging thunderstorms. It was a dull term on the whole, wasn't it?" "I can't think of a single thing you've left out, Rosalie. Shall we sign it, you people?" They all agreed, so the book was passed round, and the 8 people signed the report. The next thing was to decide what they were going to do about games for this term. Easter was always rather a difficulty for them. The first few weeks gave them ice sports, but March generally brought the spring thaw with it, and everything was muddy, and skating, skiing, and snowball fights had to be taken off the program. On the other hand, neither netball nor hockey was possible, as the field was more or less a swamp. This meant that something else had to be provided, and it was the prefect's duty to make suggestions. "What about the tracking game?" suggested Gertrude. "All right if the thaw is quick. If it isn't, well, it's all wrong," replied Grizel. "You know what it's like then, knee-deep in mud. Mattie would have a fit if we brought the youngsters into anything of that kind. As far as that goes, she'd have a fit over any of us. The cleanest person can't hold looking like a tramp after tracking through mud and puddles." "What about rounders?" suggested Mary. "Where's the use? If we could have rounders, we could have hockey and netball. Netball anyway. I suppose it'll resolve itself into our usual walks," said Rosalie. "The Middles hate them, but it can't be helped. That's the only drawback to living here." "Well, it's a jolly small drawback," declared Dira. "I'd a million times rather be at school here and put up with the thaw than be in a town, even Innsbruck." All the same, I think we ought to try to think of something fresh, insisted Grizel. As Rosalie says, the middles hate walks, even when they can break rank and wander. Can't anyone think of something? I have thought of something, said Lisa shyly, but I do not know if we may do it. Well, let's have it anyway, said Grizel. It is that perhaps we might make expeditions for geography and history at the weekend. Do you think it would be possible? We could not go every weekend, of course, but if the Middles knew that they would have a trip to Hall one Saturday to see it and to learn all they could from it in history, do you think they would make few objections to walk the other Saturdays? It's an idea, said Grizel slowly. There's a good deal we could see. We ought to do Innsbruck thoroughly, you know, and then there's Salzburg and the Stube Glacier. The only thing is, it would cost rather a lot, wouldn't it? Not if we were made a large party, said Vanna, joining in for the first time. Surely we could manage it then. The big difficulty to me is how we should get to Sparts. The railway does not open till May. We should have to walk down the mountainside, and in thaw time that would be very unpleasant. Also, we could not take the juniors. No, that's that to think of. If expeditions can be arranged for the rest of the school, we must manage something for the babies, said Grizel slowly. They could manage Innsbruck, perhaps. Even Hall they might do. But Salzburg is a longish train journey, and would tire them, and the Stube is out of the question, of course. But it is an idea, and a jolly fine one. We'll see what the staff says, anyway. Then what can we arrange for the little ones? Asked Rosalie. We must have something ready for them, you know, or the other idea will be squashed at once. There was truth in what she said. The 8 girlish faces were heavy frowns in their endeavors to settle this difficulty. 1 or 2 suggestions were made, but all had to be rejected. Some of the little ones were very little, no older than the robin. 1 or 2 were delicate, and there was always Matron, who was a good sort, but waged war on mud and dirt of all kinds. It was Mary who made the best suggestion. Couldn't they have a little expedition of their own? They love Sparts. If we could get them down there, they could have a good time in the gardens, and there's a good place where they could have cakes and coffee, and then they couldn't do as much as we could in one day, so they might take 2 or even 3 over Innsbruck. It isn't too much the getting them there as getting them back, said Grizel thoughtfully. It's a long pull up the mountain, and they would be tired to begin with. Even if 2 of the staff and a pre and a sub-pre were with them, it would be a business getting them home again. People like the Robin and Paula's little sister would be done, and the staff won't agree to anything that's going to keep them in bed all next day. Things were at an impasse, so they decided to leave the question alone and get on to the next business, which was settling duties for the term. Here the first dispute arose. Grizel, as head girl, had so much on her hands she could take on nothing beyond her turn at prep and cloakroom duty. Gertrude was captain of the games, and that would keep her occupied. Rosalie Dean agreed to undertake stationery, a task which just suited her, for she was orderly and methodical, 2 very necessary qualities for the work. Then, if I may, I will see to break, Grizel, said Lisa, as I am here during school hours only, and it will be as well for me to do that. It's a good deal of work, said Grizel doubtfully. Oughtn't you to take turns with someone? But Lisa refused to hear of it. She had no evening duties, she said, and no morning work. She would rather do the break duties herself. Then, Luigia, will you do the library? Asked Grizel. Joey, will you help as usual? And Vanna, you had better be music prefect again. You learn with Herr Ansel, and know just how he likes things. Plato needs looking after, too. She went on, referring to their eccentric singing master. Mary, you had better see to the form rooms and also the staff room, if you don't mind. That leaves hobbies for you, dear." Mary and Vanna had agreed with nods to the duties she assigned to them, but Dira was not pleased, and took pains to let them all know at once. "I don't want to be hobbies prefects," she said. "It's the most tiresome job of the lot, and you never get a chance to get on with your own work. I don't like it at all." The others stared at her in undisguised amazement. So far, no one had ever objected to any duty given her by the head girl. You simply accepted what was given you and did your best with it. When Grizel had recovered her breath, she said so. "I don't care what you've always done," said Dira calmly. "A change is a good thing sometimes, and I'm not liking the work. Why shouldn't I be music prefect?" "'Cause Vanna is," Grizel told her. "She knows Herr Enstrel, and you don't even have lessons with him. If you did, you'd not be talking rubbish about wanting to have more to do with him than you could help. Dira can have form rooms if she likes, and I'll do hobbies," said Mary, who was by way of being a peacemaker, and who saw that both Dira and Grizel were likely to have a quarrel if left long to themselves. "I don't mind. I'm not doing anything special this term, only going on with my stamps. You know the babies take a lot of time sometimes, and if Dira has anything extra she wants to do, it would be a trial to her." "Have you?" asked Grizel of Dira. "No, I haven't," said Dira sulkily. "Then you can't change, Mary. I'm sorry you don't like being hobby prefect, Dira, but all the other jobs are settled. Besides, anyhow, I don't see why you want to argue about it. The rule here is that the head girl settles the work." "'Tis a rotten rule it is then," responded Dira with spirit. "I'm not agreeing with it at all, Grizel Cochrane. Why should you choose as if we were kids?" "Because I happen to be head girl," Grizel told her firmly. "Don't be silly, Dira," said Rosalie. "We've always settled things this way, and no one ever made a fuss about it before. You didn't object last term yourself." "Ah, Bet was head girl then," said Dira. "So you're making this fuss just because I'm head girl now," said Grizel. "Well, you can go on making a fuss, but you'll be hobbies prefect till the end of term, and so I tell you." "And I won't do it, and so I tell you," retorted Dira. "'Tis a tyrant you are, Grizel Cochrane. I'm not going to put my neck under your heel." "Nobody asked you to. Don't be so absurd," said Grizel crossly. "And if you won't be hobbies prefect, then you won't have any job at all." Fire flashed in Dira's grey eyes, and her face was flushed with passion. What might have happened next, there is no saying, but just then Robin knocked on the door. "Please, it is café, and Miss Durrant says, will you have it up here, or will you have it downstairs?" "We'll have it up here, Robin," said Grizel. "Will two of you go and fetch it, please? Now, Dira," she went on, turning to the girl as Mary and Vanna followed the Robin out of the room. "I'm sorry I didn't know before you disliked being hobbies prefect, but it can't be helped now. Next term, if you still want it, you can have a shot at music. For this term the duties are arranged, and we'll have to stay put. But I showed the list to Mademoiselle last night when Madame was down, and they both saw it, and said it was all right. Of course, they couldn't know you would object. If they had, they might have asked me to alter it. As it is, they didn't, and it's signed. Madame won't be down for a fortnight now, so it will have to stay. Don't do your duty if you feel all that bad about it. I dare say we can manage. But it'll be rotten of you if you don't." Dira turned white. Her eyes gleamed black with rage. She knew that the head girl had the whip hand. Mrs. Russell was no longer working head of the school, but she still took part in it. All lists were signed by her, and all big arrangements had to be discussed with her. Mademoiselle Lapetrie had insisted on that before she had arranged to become the nominal head. If Madame, as they still loved to call her, were not coming from the Sanalp for a fortnight, then the list must remain as she had passed them. All the same, Dira was very angry. She had protested, not so much because she disliked the work, as because she objected to Grizel's rather dictatorial manner. Her protests had not worked, but she loved Grizel none the better for that. "If I must, I must," she choked out at length. "All the same, Grizel Cochrane, I'll be even with you yet." "Rats," said Grizel briefly, and began to discuss other duties with them as if nothing had happened. Mary and Vanna brought up the meal, and they were all too busy settling down to work to notice how silent the Irish girl sat through their discussions. She drank her coffee and ate the cakes they passed without realizing what she was eating or drinking. Her temper was aroused, and she was resolved to make Grizel Cochrane smart for what she had said. When the meeting had ended, and Lisa had gone home with her father, most of the prefects went off to their dormitories to change into little frocks, as they were going to dance that evening. Grizel was left behind, and Gertrude stayed with her. "I wish you had not spoken to Dira quite as you did, Grizel," said the Austrian girl rather nervously, for she did not like speaking about it at all to Grizel, who was quite likely to turn on her. Grizel looked at her frowningly. "I rather wish I hadn't myself," she owned. "But she does rile me so. After all, Gertrude, I couldn't have given in. It isn't the way we do things." "No, but you are very sarcastic," said Gertrude bravely. "She is angry, Grizel." "Well, let's hope she gets over it quickly," said Grizel. "Oh, Gertrude, I wish Bet had stayed on. I didn't want to be head girl one bit, but if I am, I'll be it." Gertrude said nothing. There seemed to be nothing to say. Grizel slipped an arm through hers. "Gertrude, I couldn't alter things like that. You do agree with me there, don't you?" "Oh, yes, I agree with that," said Gertrude readily. "But, Grizel, Dira is very angry, and she does bad things when she's angry. She is sorry after, I know, but it never stops her from doing them the next time she is, how do you call it, upset." Grizel stood still, a funny look on her face. This description might have fitted her. "Well," she said finally, "I will try to keep out of her way and not make things worse." She wished she had kept her temper and not been sarcastic about those lists. Chapter 6. Dira Gets Her Own Back. "Has anyone seen my manuscript book?" asked Grizel abruptly, coming into the big form room on Sunday afternoon. The Middles, who were all there, stared. "Your manuscript book, Grizel?" "No, I haven't," said Margia at length. "When did you have it last?" "It was in my music locker on Friday," replied Grizel. "I put it away just before afternoon school, and I slipped a letter from home into it. Now I can't find it, and I want it. At least I want the letter." "Did you have a letter?" "Lucky you," said Margia. "It was an old one," said Grizel briefly. "Haven't any of you seen the wretched thing?" They all assured her that they did not. So she went off to hunt through all the lockers in case she had slipped her book into the wrong one. Mademoiselle came along and stopped in astonishment at the sight. "Grizel," she cried in her own language, "what are you doing here?" "I'm looking for my manuscript book, mademoiselle," explained Grizel, lifting a flushed face. "But this is Sunday. You cannot do harmony on Sunday," protested mademoiselle. "Oh, it wasn't for that I wanted it," said Grizel, rising from her knees to stand before the nominal head of the school. "I left a letter in it, and I want the letter. I thought I had put the book into my locker, but it isn't there. So I was looking to see if I had made a mistake and put it into someone else's, as I was in rather a hurry." "Yes, mon petit, in that case you may look for the book," said mademoiselle, passing on and leaving Grizel to go on with her hunt, a fruitless hunt as it proved to be. Wherever that book was, it wasn't in the music lockers. Finally Grizel gave it up and went on to turn out her desk. She was certain she had not carried her harmony in form with her. Gertrude came in as she was busy and opened her eyes widely. It's my wretched manuscript book, explained Grizel. Once more she ran through a pile of exercise books. I simply can't find the thing. It seems to have vanished off the face of the earth. But Harmony, protested Gertrude. The rule about work on Sunday was strictly kept at the Chalet school. No lessons at all might be done then. In the mornings the girls went to the little Roman Catholic chapel, if there was a service. All of them that were Catholics, that is. The rest had a service of their own in one of the form rooms. In the afternoon they were free to amuse themselves with books, puzzles, or painting. The little ones had to lie down for an hour. After a café, Mademoiselle took the Catholics, and Miss Maynard had the English church girls for an hour, and they had quiet talks together. After they were free once more till bedtime. Margia Stevens, in her first term at the school, had told her mother that they had such gentle Sundays. The girls were never likely to forget their Sundays at the Chalet school, hence Gertrude's surprise at Grizel's statement. The head girl knew what was passing in her mind. "Oh, it isn't Harmony, only I left a letter of Granny's, the last one she ever wrote me, in it, and I want that letter." Gertrude's pretty face softened. Everyone knew that Grizel had loved her grandmother, who had died 2 years previously, and who had adored and petted her. She kept that particular letter because it was a good deal of gentle, loving advice, which she very seldom followed, it is true, but which she liked nevertheless. "Perhaps the book has been taken to our room," suggested Gertrude, practically, that being the only sort of sympathy Gertrude would permit. "Shall I go and see?" "It's awfully good of you, but I think I'll go myself." "Come, though, if you like." Gertrude slipped an arm through her friend's, and they went upstairs together. In the prefect's room they found Vanna, who was writing letters, and Dira, who was reading. The Irish girl scowled at the two as they came in, and turned her back on them. Vanna, deep in her home letter, took no notice of them as they hunted through the cupboard, and then went through the long, low bookshelves that ran along the wall at one side. "It isn't here," said Gertrude at length, when the most consistent search had proved that. Wherever the missing book was, it wasn't in the room. "Where on earth can it be?" said Grizel, a puzzled frown on her face. "I'm sure I put it into my locker, because I remember I had finished all my harmony for Herr Insrell, and I put it there to be ready for Monday. If I bring it up here, I nearly always forget to take it to my lesson, and nothing makes him madder than to wait while I go and fetch it. I know I put it there with my music, and now it's gone." "Perhaps it has fallen out and been put into lost property," suggested Gertrude. "It might. I'll go see. Who has the key? Whose week is it?" "Dira's," said Gertrude, after a glance at the neatly written list on the notice board. Grizel turned to Dira. "Dira, may I have the key to lost property?" she asked. "It's hanging up beside the board there," mumbled Dira, not looking up from her book. Grizel, thinking that Dira was still angry over yesterday, took no notice of her manner, but got the key and went off. Gertrude did, however, and remained where she was, looking at the Irish girl with a frown. Grizel came back in 5 minutes' time, empty-handed, and hung up the key on its nail. "No, it wasn't there," she said. "I can't imagine where it can have gotten to." "What are you looking for?" asked Vanna, who had been roused out of her letter by this time, and was taking an interest in the proceedings. "My harmony book. You haven't seen it by any chance?" "No, not since you had it on Friday," said Vanna. "But harmony, Grizel? It's the book I want. There's an old letter in it, that's all." At this, Dira started and went white. Gertrude noticed it. "Dira, have you seen Grizel's book?" she asked. Dira faced her and remained silent. She hardly dared tell the truth. She could not lie over the matter. Grizel's attention was now attracted. "Dira, do you know where it is?" she asked sharply. "Not now," said Dira almost inaudibly. "Not now? What on earth do you mean?" demanded Grizel impatiently. Her impatience had one good effect. It made Dira speak up. "I meant what I said. I haven't the least idea where it is at the moment." "On the ash heap, I should think." "The ash heap? What on earth are you talking about? Grizel had gone paler, and her eyes were beginning to look steely. Well, isn't that where the ashes are thrown? Dira spoke defiantly, but inwardly she was feeling anything but defiant. Ashes? Do you mean you've burnt it? Grizel was white now, and her lips were set in thin straight line. Dira felt frightened. However, she wasn't going to let Grizel know it. So she shrugged her shoulders. If you know, why ask? You've burnt it, repeated Grizel, as if she could scarcely believe her ears. Yes, I've burnt it. I vowed I'd make you pay for your sarcasm yesterday, and I have. It's fine, and early you'll have to be getting up tomorrow, if you want to get that harmony done again before your lesson. Dira, how could you? Cried Grizel. It was a wicked thing to do, and you have burnt Grizel's letter too, her letter that she cherished. Oh, dry up, said Grizel impatiently. What does it matter about the letter now? It's gone. As for the book, Dira, what right have you to burn school property to satisfy your silly temper? Of all childish things to do, I must say that strikes me as the most childish I've ever heard of. The Robin wouldn't do a mad thing like that. Oh, I shan't tell. With unutterable scorn in her voice, you needn't be afraid of that. I'm not afraid, retorted Dira. If it comes to that, I'll tell on myself. Yes, I can see you. Grizel was realizing her loss, and her hot temper boiled up. Dash off to Mademoiselle's room now and tell her that you lost your temper and did a thoroughly childish, spiteful thing like that, just to work it off. I can see you. I will. Do you suppose I care for you, Grizel Cochrane? Raged Dira. Girls, what does this mean? Miss Maynard had come into the room after vainly rapping for admittance, since everyone was too much interested in what was going on to heed anything else. At the mistress's words, Gertrude looked distressed, and Vanna frightened. Grizel uttered a scornful laugh and turned away. Dira, stung to utter fury by that laugh, sprang forward. I have been telling Grizel Cochrane what I think of her, Miss Maynard. 'Tis not myself would be afraid of her for all the haughty airs of hers, and since actions speak louder than words, I've been telling her 'tis I have burnt her harmony book. You've what? Exclaimed Miss Maynard, startled out of her usual self-possession. I've burnt her harmony book, repeated Dira, still too angry to care what happened. Dira, are you mad? Dira treated this as if it had never been uttered and swept on. 'Tis not meself be submitting to the tyrant of her, be she 50 times head girl here. She may be English. This was with a sudden hazy remembrance of her old nurse. But I'm Irish, and there's never a one of us fears the tyrant. But by this time Miss Maynard had recovered herself, and she interrupted what promised to be a long harangue on the wrongs of Ireland. Dira, leave the room at once, at once! Go to your dormitory, and don't leave it till I give you permission. Dira glared at her, but Miss Maynard was to be obeyed, and the look the excited girl received from the mistress helped to cool her down considerably. She turned and went without another word. Miss Maynard waited till she had gone, and then attended to Grizel. Grizel, will you kindly explain to me the meaning of this disgraceful scene? What has happened between you and Dira? Grizel shook her head. Tell tales she would not. Also, she was too angry to speak. Seeing how matters stood, Miss Maynard turned to Gertrude. Gertrude, you seem to have kept your head. Will you please tell me what this is all about? Grizel and Dira had quarrelled, said Gertrude after a moment's pause. Dira has burnt Grizel's harmony. Is it really true? She really has done such a childish thing? Yes. Poor Gertrude felt miserable over the whole thing. Miss Maynard stood in silence for a moment. Why has she done this, Grizel? Dira didn't like all the arrangements yesterday, mumbled Grizel at last, when she had kept the mistress waiting as long as she dared. I made her angry, and this is to pay me out, I suppose. How did you make her angry? I said things. Miss Maynard forbore to question up further. She sent Grizel off downstairs to the others and managed to get a more detailed account from Vanna and Gertrude. She got more than she had bargained for Vanna, thoroughly frightened, told about the precious letter, and that must have gone too, and this helped to explain Grizel's attitude. When the young mistress had finally got everything there was to get, she went off to Mademoiselle to report to her. And now, what are we to do? She asked, when she had finished. Poor Mademoiselle put her head in her hands. I cannot think. I only wish our dear Marguerite had never left us and got married. How to deal with this extraordinary happening, I do not know. Dira must be punished, of course, but I fear that will do little good. It will not make her really repentant for what she had done, nor will it return the letter. As for what Herr Ansero will say when he hears about the harmony, I shudder to think. He'll roar, I suppose, agreed Miss Maynard. He always is noisy over things like that. But Grizel certainly can't get all that work done over again in time. Doubtless, my dear Molly, replied Mademoiselle dryly, but that will not help us in dealing with that matter. Here comes Marie with café. We had better try to forget it for the time being and take our rest while we can. As for Dira, she had better stay by herself. Will you go and ask Matron to put her in the sick room for the rest of the day? She will be better left alone, I think, till she has had time to realize what she has done. And we will continue this book next Wednesday. And thanks for listening to Miss Retro Reads.